All right, let's get going. Hey, everybody. Welcome to JavaScript statements and operators and expressions and declarations and all that kind of stuff. By the end of this lesson, I hope that each and every one of you will be able to do the following four things. Recall the data types in JavaScript. Explain the relationship between statements and values. That was supposed to be expressions and values. I'm off to a great start already. Differentiate between statements and expressions, and recall at least 10 operators, as the recording software just grinds this to a halt. Okay, that's supposed to be expressions. Okay, so objective number 1, recalling the data types in JavaScript. So without looking anything up, I'm going to post this question in inbox. Head over there now. I want to see how we're doing on this right now. So what are the data types in JavaScript? So inbox prompt is posted. Let me see what you can do off the dome. Keep them coming. You all right, Lauren?
Sorry, my cat walked across the keyboard as soon as I went to hit enter. I sent you an IM too. I was like, oh, he's gonna think I'm angry or something.
Okay, a lot of a lot of string boolean number in there. That's good. Nobody got them all though. So let's talk about it a little bit. That is a terrific place to start. Where did my mouse go? There it is. All right, so let's talk data types. Every piece of data in a program has a type and a value. And so, like, if something uses the number type, it might have the value 1. If it has the string type, it might be the string 1. If it has the Boolean type, that might be true. Like most of you got that far. There were a couple like errant ones. Value is not a data type. Name is not a data type. Array, believe it or not a data type. Null is a data type. We'll talk about that in a sec.
Is there a reason you call a array a data type, literally in your complex data types
Sure.
article?
Yes, there is. It is an abstract data type. It is not a JavaScript data type.
Okay.
So there's like arrays are real. They exist, but they are not fundamental JavaScript types. So these are our basic ones, day in, day out, doing these all day long. We also have two different empty data types, we'll call them. Null, the only legal value of which is nothing, and undefined, the only legal value of which is nothing. The only value you can have in null is null, and the only value you can have in undefined is undefined. Anybody know the difference between these two?
If it's null, you said it yourself.
Yep. Versus undefined means it never had a value. So you can think of null as like this page intentionally left blank. Versus undefined, which is it never had a value. Nobody's assigned this to anything yet. Questions about null and undefined? Cool. So those are our kind of empty values. There's a weird primitive data type in JavaScript that we're not really going to do anything with in this program, but if somebody ever asks you this question, symbol, come on. Symbol is a data type, and all of its values are unique. That's what they're for. They indicate that something needs to be a unique but consistent value. And like, they're relatively new to JavaScript. You don't use them in like application code a ton. You use them in libraries mostly. But that is one of the fundamental data types. And then the last one. So all of those are what we call simple or primitive data types. There's one object. And objects are pretty special in JS. Arrays are objects. Functions are objects. Promises are objects. We have a lot of other things that are regular abstract data types, and a lot of them in other languages. All of them are just objects in JavaScript. Now, a warning. If you have a programming background, the way that JavaScript uses the word object has almost nothing to do with how that word is used in Java or C# or like pretty much every other language. Objects in JavaScript are closer to dictionaries in Python or hashes in Ruby or hash maps in Java. Key value pairs is objects in JavaScript, but they're supercharged. We can do some pretty cool things with objects that you can't do with like dictionaries in Python. But every other kind of like weird object, like arrays, those are objects in JavaScript. These are the data types. Ask me some questions.
I have a quick question. So back to the empty data types, the undefined one that never had a value, would that not give you any kind of error message because it doesn't have a value?
It depends. Are you trying to do something with it? Because something can be undefined. But something that has been undefined, you can't do anything with it. So I'll give you an example. Oh, and I promised somebody yesterday that I would show you how to do grown-up running JavaScript. So we'll do both at the same time. Yeah, let's see. We'll do this JS lesson. All right, empty folder, Nothing up this sleeve, nothing up this sleeve. So if you just want to run some JavaScript on your command line, you can make a JavaScript file. And I could say something like const a equals 1, console log a. And then if I type, so this is what my folder looks like right now. If I type node index.js, prints it to the screen. Hey, now you can save it in files and stuff. Use Git, all the other things that we can do with files. So let's say I didn't have that. So right now A is undefined. Oops. So that one did throw an error. I'm trying to think of something that wouldn't. Maybe calling type of on it. Let's see. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, something that's undefined, you can't do anything with it, but something being undefined isn't in and of itself an error. Good question.
I guess
what else?
not to keep digging into that too much, but like what's the point of having something undefined then if there's not really any function for it?
Sure, because most things are undefined, and so the computer has to have some way to represent that. If I try to work with something that I have not defined, the computer has to have some way to classify that. That's what undefined is.
Okay, so it's just classification. Gotcha.
Correct. Versus if I make that null, like that, and try logging it. Okay, makes sense. Also, I'm kind of curious what comes back if I do this. I'll bet that is undefined and doesn't have the reference error. Yep. There you go. So I declared that variable, but I didn't assign anything to it. I didn't even assign null. So right now, that is undefined.
When talking about objects, specifically when going through the material, in the notes it said it attributes it all to one place. Is it okay to think of an object as a reference, an index card, to put it into some kind of real world metaphor or example?
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Okay, sweet.
It's a collection of things.
Yeah, because we give it a name, right? The object
Yeah.
itself will be given its own name with its own subdirectory.
Well, it'll be Kyle, and it'll have the property first name, which will be the string Kyle, and the property called last name. But all those things are grouped together, so you can pass them around together.
Sweet.
Because like otherwise, if I was just trying to do, if I was trying to represent myself in code with just our everyday objects, or sorry, our everyday data types, I might do something like const first name Kyle, last name Coberly, age 2, and then I might, log those. Cool, works. So why wouldn't I just do that all the time? Good question. Because as soon as, let's see, Bryce joins the team, then I've got first name Bryce, last name Cherry, age 3. Okay, well that's a problem because I already used these variable names. Yikes. So like your natural inclination is going to be to do that. or Kyle first name, or Bryce first name. Oops. Hopefully you can see where that starts getting out of control, like right quick. So the smarter way to do that is to say that Kyle is a collection of these things. I just take the whole thing. So, and then I can have a Bryce. Or let's see, Bryce is 3. So now each of us has our own thing. We can reuse the same stuff in this. And I can log them both. Like so. Even better, I can, since their property names are the same, that like effectively makes this a kind of data type. I could call that data type person. And I could say that if I make a function called like print greeting that takes in a person, it can be something like, hi, I'm person.firstname, person.lastname, and I am person.age years old. And now if I call print greeting with Kyle and print greeting with Bryce, that works because they're the same shape. They both have a first name and a last name and an age. So you can kind of think of objects like shapes.
I have a question regarding that code.
Yeah.
So how did it know to refer person to your objects?
Ooh, great question. Who can answer that question?
Because you associate person first name, person last name. So what it's actually doing is deriving first name in place of person, and then last name and so on. So in the line 13, we see there's person dot. We know that it's referring to print greeting, and that associate person, and then dot first name associate to first name Kyle, first name Bryce.
So let's trace this out. Let's do the thing that CJ was talking about this morning. So if I screenshot that. Let's do that.
Because you called it person in the function?
Yes. Because, and we'll see this in just a sec. Let's like associate this with some of your vocab. So let's round robin this, but I need to be able to see people's faces. All right. Starting with Andy, what is the vocab term for like this person right here? Starts with a P.
I can guess parameter just
There
from
we
what
go.
you're.
Cool. This is a parameter. Now, question for everybody. Think about it to yourself for a sec. So what are these here? If that's the parameter, what are Kyle and Bryce here? Think to yourself. Bryce, what is your object right here? What's the vocab word?
Is that just a value?
Almost. Also a vocab word, starts with an A.
An array? No. An argument.
Yeah. Person is a parameter. Kyle and Bryce are arguments here. Now, Shannon, I feel like you cracked the code on this. What's the difference between a parameter and an argument? Is Shannon here? I was just guessing.
Do you mean me?
No.
Okay, good.
Is it me
Sorry,
blurting
Sharon.
out the answer?
Sorry.
So the argument can be a variable. It can change.
Yep.
And the parameter would be like, I don't know how to phrase it, but it would be the thing that glues them together, I guess.
I thought one of your answers had.
That was me. For in here?
No, not in here. Just in like your submissions.
Okay.
But
That was not me.
I saw theoretical and actual. That's pretty good. So function, like when I declare this function over here, this isn't actually doing anything. It's a definition. So it goes, assuming I get a theoretical person, I would like you to print out that person's first name and last name and age. When I actually use the function, I'm calling it, now it's real. So what ends up happening is, all right, so person gets replaced with the Kyle object from up here. And you go, okay, so every time it says person in here, that's just a reference to Kyle. And so you go, okay, I am Kyle.firstname. Well, Kyle.firstname, that becomes the string Kyle. Person.lastname becomes the string Coberly. And Kyle.age becomes 2. And so then that's what prints to the screen. When this gets called again with Bryce, all the things that say Kyle are references to this Bryce object instead.
So like in this context right now, you didn't have to use the word person. It could have been any word.
It could have been fart. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
I'll prove it.
So it's just like defining the function.
Yeah. It's a placeholder. Remember, the only reason we're using real words at all instead of beeps and boops is because it helps us understand it. They're like notes to yourself.
And it can only pull from.
Go ahead, Brad.
Sorry. It can only pull from what you inputted. So like if you were to put Brad, there's nothing there. If you were to put dog, there's nothing there.
Correct.
So it's only what's in this file itself.
Right.
I might be jumping ahead here, but obviously we're not going to enter all of this data whenever we have a web page up and running. So is this pulling from an object built into your website where somebody enters that information?
Sure. So that can happen a couple ways. Like the real answer to your question is you're going to, so this is your browser. You're going to do the stuff that we talked about in the first unit where I go, hey, give me this index.html and it gets that back from a file server. And then that index.html is going to include a reference to a JavaScript file, and so then it goes and gets that index.js or whatever it's called from them. And in that JavaScript file are going to be instructions to make calls to some API server. And so it goes, hey, can you give me all the students in this class? And then the API server goes, sure, here's an array of objects representing all the students in the class. And that's where these come from.
That the API would be something along the lines of SQL Server.
So it would be talking to something like SQL Server for you. So
Okay.
like that database would be over here. And this would be like an Express server or a Rails server or a Java server or whatever. And that's talking to a database and like running SQL queries and all that kind of stuff, and then just giving you the data back. So, por ejemplo, let's see, did that actually work? Maybe? Yes, no, maybe so. There we go. If I go to the LMS, yeah, I don't have a file somewhere with all of your submissions and stuff. If I look at this network tab, all right, this one right here. Hey, that kind of looks like an object. Hey, that kind of looks like an array of objects. Hey, what do you know? It's an object with this property. And hey, what do you know? That looks an awful lot like Markdown. And so like all the Markdown for the stuff that you see, I type that into a regular Markdown file. And then I keep it in a database somewhere, kind of. And then when your browser requests that data, it gets all this stuff back. And when I look at, let's see, does it have, where's the rest of it? And then one of these sockets, there it is. These are a little harder to read. Each of these has like all of your performances and stuff, and all the evaluations of them. But they end up coming back as like arrays of objects. And so then when I get those back, I can plug them into these functions that have the parameters and stuff and do stuff with them. When you submit something, it grabs all that data that you entered, makes a little JavaScript object out of it, turns it into JSON, throws it over to my server, gets stored in a database. So then when I'm asking for that again, I can get that JSON back, I can rehydrate it back into the object, do stuff with it. Ask me more questions.
So what matters the most here in this function that we're looking at together is, I think Sean alluded to it, it's what comes after the period, not necessarily what you call, person dot, but more importantly, what you're referencing after the period, which links it to those variables that you defined up there.
Yeah, so when I call first name there, get a brighter color. When I call first name there, it's looking up either that or that based on which one got passed in. Those aren't like tied or anything though. What I could do is I can look up like a variable that doesn't exist, and if I try to run it, it just gets mad. Hey, there's no Brad around here. If change that back to person, and I ask for a property that doesn't exist, or I just spell something wrong. Like if I do capital F first name, it's case sensitive, so it's gonna go, I'm undefined Coberly, I'm undefined Cherry. Because neither of those have a capital F first name. And so when we're doing this whole like swapping things out exercise, if that's a capital F, it goes, all right, Kyle, property with capital F first name doesn't exist, ergo, that ends up evaluating to undefined.
Is it just a style preference to have the first letter in lowercase for the first word and the second letter? Okay.
It's a convention. It's just like the indentation rules and stuff in HTML. It is not a rule that it's called camel case, by the way. There's a couple different cases you run into in programming. There's snake case. There is camel case because it's got a hump. And then like any subsequent words also start with capital letters. There's Pascal case. There's what we do on the command line, which is kebab case. There's almost no languages where those actually make a difference, but they're conventionally used in like plenty of different places. In JavaScript, everything that isn't a class is camel case. And so what you need to know right now on week 3 is that everything is camel case. And like it is like 90%, 99% of the stuff in JavaScript is camel case. So while you don't have to do it, that's like a giveaway that like you don't write JavaScript, is you use a different casing format.
So, and this is probably another dumb question, but if something had 3 words, like in print greeting hello, would greeting and hello both be caps?
Yep, they absolutely would. So just like that.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. More questions about this?
All right, I do have a question, Kyle. One more.
Yeah, hit me.
Could you talk about how those dollar signs are being used?
Sure.
Because when I was reading functions, I was trying to figure out like what role they have.
Absolutely. So it's not just the dollar sign. It's this entire thing here. So if you make your string with backticks instead of single or double quotes, oops, where'd it go? There it is. What that does is it allows you to use these. Everything outside of those is a regular string. Everything inside of these is JavaScript and gets turned into a string when it gets evaluated. So when you evaluate this expression, like that turns into that string. But even things like numbers, when we evaluate this expression, we get that number 2 or 3 back, and then that gets coerced into a string and then put in with the rest of this. Because the alternative way to do that, the way that we did it for years and years and years before that, looked like this. You'd use quotes, and then you'd have to concatenate the JavaScript. God, it's even hard to do just to demo it. Nope. There and there. Oops. Cool. These are the exact same thing. This sucks. This is so hard to get right. Like, I wasn't putting on a show. Like, this is like actually hard to type out and make sure that you've got the pluses in the right place, or like make sure that the spaces are there. And it reads like so difficult. Like like you can't look at it and just figure out that you got it formatted right. You totally can with template strings. So that's why they got added to JavaScript. And lots of languages have them, but JavaScript did not. We had to just concatenate everything together like that.
That's good to know, and actually to see what impact it has too, because I know I started some of the reading exercises this morning, and I was a little lost on some of the things, but a lot of that's being cleared up here. Like the person's kind of like that word can be whatever. Now what the $sign brackets do when they're inside of a backtick.
Yeah.
Starting to come together, so
Good.
I appreciate it.
You can also use single or double quotes to make the strings. The problem with that is this. Anybody spot the error?
It's the apostrophe.
Yeah. It makes no distinct, like if you're using apostrophes in the string, the thing falls apart. And so using double quotes, you get around that with the trade-off of, like, if I wanted to use double quotes around, like in the string, I need to escape them. So use a backslash, backslash. I'll take that trade-off, man. The number of times you have to use double quotes in a string, way less than how often you have to use apostrophes. Oh, and I'm throwing this out there right now. Hopefully it saves at least one of you some kind of thing. Oh no, my VS Code was being weird, and so I just did this in Google Docs or Word or something like that. Like, this character right here is technically not an apostrophe. It's called a prime. It's that key on your keyboard, but if I look up smart apostrophe, where is it? Okay, so these are called typographer's quotes, like that. These are called double primes. In programming, we use double primes, period, the end. These typographer's quotes are completely different characters. And so if you try to wrap your code in typographer quotes, like that, it's really hard to spot why it's not working. Especially, like, depending on your font too, it can be really hard to tell that those aren't double primes. And you're like, the computer can't compile that. It doesn't know that they look like quotes. All it knows is that's character 23 or whatever. So totally unrelated. And when you type something in a word processor like Google Docs or Word or something like that, it automatically replaces your primes with typographer quotes.
It'll do that. It'll do that with ellipses too.
Exactly.
I don't know if we end up using encode because it takes an ellipsis and that is a character in its processor.
Exactly.
We've had that before with coding where people would copy from one to the other, and they're like, I don't understand how it works. And I'm like, well, how did you do it? And how'd you transfer this over? And when they explained, I'm like, that's because these characters they don't exist in
yeah, man.
code.
So like that's the reason you can't do this in Google Docs and copy and paste it in.
So as long as you did it in something like TextEdit, Notepad, Writer, that are
Correct.
Markdown ones, you can do it? Okay.
A text editor and a word processor are totally different pieces of software. Any text editor will do this.
So this actually happened to me. I was editing a JSON file using I was using like SharePoint and then using Power Automate to send out an email after requests were done. And so I was like just copying and pasting the JSON file for like 18 different regions. And so I put the JSON file into Word, and then I just did my edits and then just like copy and pasted everything. And I couldn't figure out like why the hell it wasn't working.
There you
I
go.
just ended up rewriting the code in the container of Power Automate, and then the code worked. But I didn't change anything. So now I know.
There you go.
Thank you.
Cool. More questions about data types. So I'd mentioned that arrays are objects. This might make some more sense of that. So who can give a shot at when you would use an object versus an array? Because they solve very similar problems.
So like an array would store values, but then you would only be able to find those values by their index. So if you were doing something like this, or say like building a game where you need to have a sword that has specific properties, right? Then an object would be better, because then you could say like, I need the sword based on whether it's gold or things like that.
Love it. Yeah, if each of the parts of something are labeled, like this is a way better way to do this than like that. Because they're not labeled. You can do all of the same stuff with that, though. I could do like, if I comment that out, get rid of that trash. And instead of person.firstName, I did person at index 0, person at index 1, person at index 2. That does the exact same thing. Oops. Didn't like that I declared it twice. Works exactly the same. That's way harder to read, though. A lot easier to make a mistake on. Dot first name. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So we tend to not use it for things that, like nouns that have like characteristics. That's a bad way to do an array. What you should use arrays for, things that are plural. Like, for example, people. So I could have like const people is an array of Kyle and Bryce. If I was trying to do that with an object, similarly, would not make any sense. It would be like const people, I don't know, first Kyle, second. Like you'd be really struggling to come up with what these would be labeled with, because that's not the right data structure for it. So arrays are for lists of things, plurals. These are for singular nouns that have characteristics to them.
And isn't this just on line 11 an array of objects that you've
Correct.
created?
That's exactly what it is. And the array itself, this might put together why arrays are objects. Like the thing I'm about to tell you is what I call a little lie. This isn't true, but if you believe this, like for the immediate future, no ill will come to you. So you could also write this as that's the same thing. So the reason we can access stuff by index in arrays is like those are the keys of the object. If your brain is full, don't listen to the thing I'm about to say. If this is stuff that you're like feeling fairly comfortable with, that's why we can use that alternate syntax for accessing these. So you can also access properties of an object like that. The advantage of which is like then those can be variables. Like first name property is called first name, the string, and then I can pass that in here. That's how you do a variable. All right. Last I'm going to say about that for now. All right, data types. More questions about them. All right, off the dome, I'm going to redo the inbox prompt. Come on, any day now. Any day now. There we go. All right, what are the data types in JavaScript? Much better answers. Hey, there we go. Keep it coming. Okay, a couple of you missed object, but by and large, that's exactly what we're talking about. Where to go? Where to go? There we go.
We need an edit button on there. Thought I had it.
All right, those are the data types. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this is that this relationship between expressions and values very closely related to data types. Because I have a hunch that one of the things that was tripping people up about expressions is that when we're trying to like bring an expression down to its simplest form will always be a data type. It has to be one of these. In fact, you could say that anything that isn't one of these, but evaluates to one of these, like that's an expression. So things like not 42, that's not a data type because it's got that operator on it. that evaluates to the Boolean false, that is a basic data type. That's a primitive or an object. That's how we know that it's been evaluated all the way down. Something that evaluates to just an array. Cool. That is an expression. Something that needs to do a calculation on the array, but evaluates to a different array. That's an expression. Ask me some questions about the relationship between expressions and values. All right. So inbox prompt. Please explain the relationship between expressions and values. Question is prompted. Take 3 minutes. All right, much better answers. I'm happy with this. Okay, so charging forward. Differentiate between statements and expressions. So, who's got like a good definition of a statement for me?
Like an action or a command?
Love it. You're telling the computer to do something. So, some examples of statements. Could be store this data. Call this function. Yeah, like honestly, most of it's just that. Store this thing, call this function. Ta-da! So those are statements. Now, like, statements are like a program or a function is made up of statements. You can't have a function that doesn't have at least one statement in it. You can't have a program that doesn't have at least one statement in it. So if we go over here, all right, I'm going to throw up another inbox prompt. I want you to figure out how many statements there are in this file. So for inbox to catch up, how many statements are in this file? Go. Scott's got it. Amp's got it. Keep them coming. Sean's got it. Cool. Everyone else, I hope you got a better answer next time. So let's talk about which of these are statements, because this can be confusing. This is not a statement. This is a statement. Who can tell me why all of that is a statement, not each of these?
Because it's all encapsulated.
It's all one thing. And so what's the action being taken here?
It produces one
Right.
value.
We're identifying the value with that.
Oop, remember the
variable.
actions we
Storing
talked about?
storing data.
Store this data. In the Kyle variable, store the following data. The object is all one piece of data. So this is one statement. All of this, same thing. All one statement. This, store this data. In the people variable, store an array with these two objects in it. That is one instruction. All of this, that's 3 statements. Questions about that?
And so on line 11, we see that this is going to be one statement, whereas people is an expression. Kyle, Bryce is an exception, and people equals Kyle, Bryce is an expression.
So,
right?
So the expressions here, that's an expression. It's also a value, but it's also an expression because we need to store, like, the only thing that variables can store is values. They can't store expressions, but they can store the results of expressions, values. So that's an expression. This is an expression. That is an expression. That's a statement. That's a statement. That's a statement.
I got confused. I put that the function itself would be considered a statement. I was thinking of it as an action.
So we'll get to there. We're just talking about these first 3. There are more.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
5 was the correct answer, by the way.
I did the same thing, Kurt.
So we've got these. Any questions about these 3 statements here? Cool. That's a statement. What is it telling the computer to do?
Print it.
Print
The
it,
log,
right? So what's the function?
yeah.
What's like the action here?
It's calling on the function.
It's calling this
Right.
log function. That's a statement. The thing inside of it is an expression. That's going to evaluate to a string. The whole line is a statement. Now, really easy thing to get tripped up by. This is not this is not a statement. The function definition is neither an expression nor a statement. It's a declaration. Don't worry about why. This is a kind of a quirky JavaScript thing. And I think in a lot of languages, those might be considered statements. It's not in JavaScript, and it's not important why. Just know that things that start with the function keyword are not statements. The stuff inside of them, a function has to have at least one statement or it doesn't do anything. And then that is a statement. Because we are calling a function. Now, what gets really wild is, okay, let's say I stored this in a variable first. And then logged that. And returned the message. Now we're getting into flavor country. So, I need a brave volunteer to explain which things are statements and which things are expressions in these 8 lines.
Can I take a whack at it?
Please do.
Okay, so the top line, that function print green is not a statement.
Correct.
Then we go down. That is a statement.
Yes.
With the expression inside.
Yes.
And then this is console log message. So this is calling unstored data. So this is calling on the function. So this would be a statement.
Yes.
And then
what's message?
Messages, that's just the expression, right?
Correct. What's this?
Okay. That would be return message. So that's returning. So it's asking it to store the data. So it's still a statement then.
Still a statement. Okay. What about this?
Same thing. That's a statement as well.
This is a statement. And what's this?
That's the expression inside that's calling.
Cool. And anything else?
Would the whole function print green, the whole thing, be a statement as well?
So that's a
So you have,
statement.
like statements within the statement, or statements with no.
So this is a statement, as is
Right.
this and this and this. This is also one other thing. And it's because of this line.
Is it also a declaration?
Good guess. This is the only declaration in the file, like the function declaration.
An expression?
It's also an expression because it has a return value. So if I pass in Bryce, that print greeting function also evaluates to this whole string with Bryce's information in it. I could store it. Now that entire thing is a statement, and all of this is an expression, and this is an expression. Now it's pretty much just a statement now.
Wait, so with that earlier statement code that you added previously, that changed print greeting to an expression. It's no longer a statement. The statement comes.
It is like it's also a statement, but like when I save it into something, then that entire line is the statement. So all of that is a statement, and this part of it is also an expression. Like this statement does a hell of a lot more than this does because it executes that function and stores the return value all in one line. That's still one statement.
There should be a word for that. I mean, I feel like there should be something more than
sure,
something that does too.
You can like I would not have hurt feelings if you called it a compound statement.
Thank you.
I don't think that's an actual word, but like that's what's happening here.
It became one in my head just now.
There you go. More questions about statements and expressions. Cool. Let's look at another one. What's something that has... All right, cool. Ooh, this is a good one. All right, so same question in inbox. How many statements are in this file? Hit me. Couple more. Cool. We did better on that one. And this one is a little trickier, but the correct answer is 4. That's a statement. We're evaluating that. It evaluates to an object, FYI. Storing it in there. So that's all one statement. The same thing on the next line. That's 2 statements. This one, we're calling a function. That's a statement. Also, this entire thing is a statement because we're calling the add event listener function. We're doing other weird stuff inside of it, which is why this is a little tricky. But that's 4 statements. Just a sec. Questions about that? All right, I'm going to do one more. Let's see, is it in here? Nope. No, it's not going to be in service. Let's go to a something in the LMS. Maybe perfect. Yeah, this is a good one. All right, so actually, I'm going to torture this a little bit just to make it easier. I'm going to put that back. All right, same question. How many statements are in this file? Hit me. Couple more. All right, so a little better that time. The correct answer was 5. That's a statement. That's a statement. That's a statement. This is a statement. And this entire thing is a statement. Did anybody notice a giveaway on this one? It wasn't in any of the other stuff we did in the other files. What else are there 5 of on this screen?
You have the termination icon there on line 7 to give it away.
Correct, the semicolon. So if like that termination statement, the thing that it terminates is a statement. Semicolons go at the end of statements. So if you have, if your text editor is like automatically adding them or something like that, that's also a giveaway that something is a statement. All right, we need to keep working on statements, I think, but otherwise, doing all right. Any last questions before we break for lunch? All right. Each and every one of you can recall the data types in JavaScript now. Each and every one of you can explain the relationship between expressions and values. And we're getting there. We're making progress on the difference between statements and expressions. And we'll talk about operators some other time. Thank you very much. Have a good lunch.
That's so cool.